Hi, everyone. Welcome to our CPS Garfield Park office. My name is Evelyn Green. My name is Evelyn Green. I am the project director for StarNet Region 5, which is housed here in this building. So welcome to our home. I am thrilled to welcome you all to this inclusion town hall tonight with our sister organization, Early Choices and Aspire. So we're going to get right to it. I'm going to pass it on to
Miss Claire. Hello, everyone. My name is Claire Killey. I'm representing Aspire Chicago this evening. We are a Chicagoland nonprofit that supports children and adults with developmental disabilities and their families, and we promote inclusive communities. So you'll see up here our mission and vision, and I want to tell you a little bit about our 4 enterprises. The first of which, our Partners Enterprise, includes our coffee company, which you may be drinking from now. We have some samples in the back you can help yourself to. Aspire Coffee Works is a social enterprise. It's a partnership between Metropolis Coffee Company and Aspire Chicago, through which we're able to employ adults with disabilities at the coffee facility, and 100% of our sales benefit the rest of Aspire's services. We also have 2 adult enterprises, Living and Careers. Our Living enterprise focuses on supporting adults with developmental disabilities in gaining independent living skills through our community homes or our Life on My Own program. Our Careers enterprise includes our Aspire Career Academy. And last but not least, the enterprise that I'm representing, our Kids enterprise, has pediatric therapies, educational supports, and inclusion consulting services for schools and other community sites. So thank you to our partners, again, for letting us have the opportunity to be a part of this. We're very excited about it. Feel free to ask me questions afterwards about any of our enterprises. And I do want to just mention that for the sake of respecting all of our communities tonight, we're going to try our best to refrain from using specific names of schools or children that are not our own, names of those children, just to be respectful of everyone's experience. So thank you, everyone.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Emily Ropars, and I'm an LRE specialist with Early Choices. Ann Kramer, our project director, is going to talk a little bit more about Early Choices and what we do. But I will be here to help facilitate your questions throughout tonight and present them to the panel. So if you look on your table, there are baskets with pens in them, and there are index cards next to them. If you have a question that comes up while our panel is being presented, please write those questions down and put the index card back in the basket. And Claire and I will be walking around to gather those and make sure they get asked during the course of the evening. So thank you very much and welcome.
Hi, I'm Ann Kramer with Early Choices. We're using the microphone in the room and you see the camera. We're offering Spanish interpretation, and we're broadcasting to folks who couldn't be here tonight. So just letting you know why the formality of the microphone. So Early Choices is a preschool least restrictive environment initiative of the Illinois State Board of Education. So our job is to increase the number of preschoolers who have access to inclusive programming. And we do that with professional development, and we partner with StarNet for much of that. And then we also do things like tonight, get the word out about inclusion and help people better understand what it is and what it can look like. So, and Claire mentioned there's a bunch of materials at the back of the room. We'll be talking about some of them tonight, but help yourself. And I know all of us brought extra copies, so if you want to bring them back to your program or your other families or whoever, they're all there for you. So, but I'm going to kind of give us a little lay of the land, a little bit around inclusion, because there's been some really great things happening across our nation and right here in Illinois. So it's, I call it like the perfect storm of inclusion right now. We have in 2015, our federal government, Department of Education and the Department of Health and Human Services came together and wrote a joint policy statement. And so education is under the Department of Education, and then Head Start and childcare is under the Department of Health and Human Services. So those are 2 different federal agencies. And so there's different rules and different funding, and it gets so confusing, but yet we know our children could be in all of those locations and receiving those services. So those organizations coming together to say inclusion's important and we're not doing enough of it. The federal law has been around for many years, and yet we haven't really made a lot of progress in including young children. And so kind of pushing to the states to say, you need to do better. And that has been incredibly helpful in Illinois, and I'll talk about that in a minute. The policy statement also goes over some of the research around inclusion, and I won't go through all of these, but in general, children do better when they're included with their same age peers. So children with disabilities being in classrooms with children without. And it isn't just the children with disabilities who do better, it's all the children in the classroom. And all of us, make it our mission to look for strategies to promote that high quality inclusive practices. But probably my favorite point is the last one. The more time together, the better everyone does. So it's not 5 minutes in or 20 minutes in, it's all day, every day. So that's also backed up with the research that we need to be there and stay there. So that's my favorite point. Also, some other, a little later, in last year in January, the Department of Education, they occasionally put out letters kind of clarifying the law. And in January of 17, they put out a Dear Colleague letter that reiterates from the Department of Education and OSEP how important the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act and LRE, Least Restrictive Environment, Serving Children in Inclusive Placements is. And they kind of break it down and remind school districts and states that they really need to do it. They can't just say, we don't have any typically developing kids that go to school in our building, so we can't do inclusion. They say, no, you got to go find those kids. You got to partner with the community, partner with Head Start, and make it work. So, and all of these documents, if they're not on our back table, they're all on our website. So we can point you to those if you don't find them. And then, so those are federal things. And then in Illinois, most recently, the Illinois State Board of Ed, which oversees our early childhood special ed, came out with an inclusion clarification because for many years they've said with our the funding that they give to school districts to support children in Preschool for All, which is the gen ed component of early childhood, they said you should make some accommodations and include children, but they never really got very specific about what that was. And in this last year, they came out with this inclusion clarification document, which really lays it out. You can see there's a lot of bullets on that document, but it kind of lays it out to say that inclusion is important and you need to be including children in all your classrooms and embedding services and supports in those classrooms. So we can't just, again, we need to pay attention to it. So those factors have come together and really brought us to where we are today. So we get to talk about inclusion tonight. Oh, I got one more, sorry. So this is our website, actually, Early Choices. And we do, with that policy statement, we put together an online learning module that's available. You can just go, sign in here and it will, there's 3 20-minute PowerPoints that are recorded that you can watch and learn more. So it kind of takes you through all those pieces around the research and strategies to implement. So we've got a lot of other goodies on there too, but this is our latest. So.
So I'm going to facilitate tonight, but I won't be talking a lot. Our smart panelists are going to do most of the talking. And the first thing I'm going to do is to have them introduce themselves. I'm going to introduce you to them and then have them tell you a little bit about their experience with inclusion. I just want to remind everyone that we are going to try to be respectful and not necessarily name specific other children or schools, just their children and what's going on with them. And I also wanted to let you know, do some quick housekeeping. Restrooms are down the hall to your left. If there are two single stalls, two single washrooms, and if those are occupied, you can go around the corner and there's one with multiple stalls. So I didn't want anybody to have to ask where those were. That's important. Okay, so we're going to start. Let me introduce you. On the far end of the table are Taylor and Natalie Gardner, and they're going to talk about their son, Miles, right? Blake. Miles is Christine's son. Then we have Christine Palmieri, and she's going to talk about her son, Miles. And Ann McNally is one of my favorite people in the whole world to work with. She's a principal at one of our early childhood sites in Chicago. And we do a lot of work with her around lots of things, including inclusion. So she's going to talk about her experiences as well. So I'm going to start down here with you guys, give you the mic, and just tell us a little bit about your experience with inclusion. Tell us about your son and all those things.
Okay. I guess I'm up. So I'm Natalie, and these are our kids. Blake is on the left. He is 4. And then our son Gabe, who just turned 10. And then our daughter Berkeley, who's 20 months, going on 20. But Blake is, who we're here to talk about tonight, he is in his 2nd year of early learning preschool. And we're so thrilled to be here because we have just had a wonderful experience with where Blake goes. And it really started from just the first part of Blake is going to school. Here's what it looks like. And the meetings began. And we have been so blessed and thankful to have an amazing team who has walked with us hand in hand, step by step, encouraging, supportive. And I'll be honest, we were not sure. We were actually very nervous, weren't we? I remember that very first meeting.
I think I was probably more nervous than you, but I think I was probably more nervous than she was, but
That's probably true. But so we went to this first meeting and we were really overwhelmed. We weren't really sure if we could trust anybody because, of course, you talk and you try to get your research and, we weren't really sure what we were going to expect. And even right from the get-go, it became very clear in our meeting and in our district that we live in that we were a team, and we were so thankful for that. And I think it caught me off guard at first because I was like, wait a minute, this feels really good. It's not supposed to feel good. But the more we talked, the more we were able to see them in action as a partner in our son's education, the more excited I think that we became about what was happening with Blake, and it felt really good as parents because we have big dreams and big goals for our son Blake from the very beginning. That has never changed. And our experience in our school district really reinforced that for us. And so we were very, very thankful that they did that. Blake has been attending this particular school for 2 years. The communication is constant. I feel like not really just part of a team, but part of a family because that's what it is, and it's a unified goal to include my son, to give him the very best school skills and tools possible, and to cheer him on along the way. And that's what we love about what we're seeing with our son, Blake. Do you have anything you want to share with?
not at this point. No. You did a
Okay.
good job.
Okay. So yeah, so it's been really, really good. So we're so thankful for that.
That was not our experience. My name is Christine Palmieri, and I have a 9-year-old with autism, and he's in the 4th grade at a Northside Elementary School. He's in a CPS, public elementary school, which is our neighborhood school. We are. It's been a challenge, but we're in a really great place now. And I think that a big part of the efforts were getting the team to a point where we were working collaboratively and having everybody understand why that was so beneficial. It wasn't just about my son, wasn't just about me. It was more about all of the teachers and his peers that he came in contact with throughout the day. He has a mix of pull-out education in a separate special education classroom, but most of his day is push-in in a general education classroom, and he does have a dedicated one-on-one aide. Our biggest push, due to some of the challenges of being within CPS, at some point he didn't have the proper supports and services that were required to be in the least restrictive environment. So I had a choice. Either he could be privately placed, or we could fight for the right supports and services to allow him to be in an inclusive classroom. And that's been the choice that I've made, and he's been absolutely thriving ever since. And I think that he is happy, he really enjoys it, and his peers really enjoy having him in the classroom as well. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. My name's Ann McNally, and I am the principal of the school on the northwest side of Chicago, kind of close to O'Hare Airport. I go in and out of 2 or 3 different suburbs to get from my home in Chicago back to my school in Chicago. So I've been there 9 years, and I could not be more proud to be the principal of the Chicago Public School. We work as a team, as a family, and we are all very different, and we have very different backgrounds and philosophies, but we come together when it comes to the needs of the students in front of us. We team with parents. We actually reach out to parents before they come to our school and guide them, and then continue to guide them as they leave our school and go into other Chicago public schools. I am so excited to be here because this audience shows me that there is, a strong interest in inclusion and in supporting each other through this journey, because there are many stories like this that it's a difficult journey. And I definitely think it takes a team to support and do it together. You all mentioned relationships. It's the key. Communication and relationships, in my opinion, those are the keys to successful inclusive practices. So I'm going to turn the microphone back over to Evelyn, and I really, really look forward to your questions and thinking through some of the challenges with you.
Thank you, Ann. That was a great segue, because I was going to remind you to write your questions down for the panelists, because we may run out of things to say. So we need your questions so we can answer them. All right, I'm going to start and go on with Christine. I'll start it with you and then maybe move down. But obviously, it was a struggle. Not quite as easy for you, a little bit of a struggle, we're glad you're here, because that's one of the stories that's there too. And we want to talk about all of that. But I guess my question is, why did you think, why do you feel so passionately about having him included? And what are the positive things that you've seen as a result of that? And then you guys can kind of bounce off that too.
Yeah, I think my mother growing up was a special education teacher. So some of the acronyms and the knowledge around was familiar to me. So, I have some friends that are special education teachers, and I have a lot of friends that live in New York City, and they have the ASD Nest programming in New York City, which is an inclusion process and a program surrounding that. I think what was the biggest thing for me is we live in our neighborhood where our public school is, and it's a block and a half away, and our neighbors are my son's peers. And so he sees them at the grocery store, and he sees them at the playground, and they know him. And whether or not sometimes he says hi back, they do say hi to him. And I felt it was really important for him to be included. He really thrives. My concern has always been social and emotional, so I almost stopped caring about academics because it was something that I felt was more important. And what I've seen by him being in the general education classroom is he's become competitive, and he's really trying to thrive and meet the level that his peers are at. And that's been something that I didn't exactly expect. So once we started to see that, essentially when he went into school in kindergarten, he did have services and supports from early intervention, but we sort of dropped off between early intervention and kindergarten, and that was unfortunate. And so upon entering his kindergarten class, he didn't have supports and services. He didn't have an aide until last year. So the struggle to get him the supports and services to even be at our neighborhood school was challenging, more challenging than it should have been. But for me, it was always that was the least restrictive environment for him. And we were going to do whatever it took, because sometimes it's a challenge to make the decision for private placement. I sat days and nights and thinking, well, but maybe if he were in a private placement or in a cluster program or a classroom with kids just like him, then he would be more understood and he would be happier and he would have truer valued friendships. And I spent so much time focused on that. I missed the fact that he was building friendships with his peers and our neighbors. And, he was getting invited to birthday parties and we were going to sports events. My son doesn't love sports, but he will go and watch his friends. And so there have just been numerous things that he's done and thrived from that I don't think he would have had opportunity or access for had he gone into a different educational setting. But there were many times where I wasn't sure if I was doing the right thing, and knowing that our administration and our teachers are working with us now, it's just been phenomenal. So if that answers the question.
We have absolutely loved Blake being included in class. Hands down, every day he is just diving right in with his peers. He is doing art. He is making friendships. The ability to watch and learn from what his peers are doing is just awesome. We see so many amazing changes in him in such a positive way, because it's repetition for him. And it's such a beautiful thing, because as he sees it, he's able to implement it and he's able to do it, and he blows us away. What I didn't expect as we put Blake into school was how the other kids were going to benefit from having Blake in class. And when I go there and I see him and I see his peers working with him, helping him, playing with him, sharing with him, talking to him, laughing together. And it dawned on me very early on that this was a benefit for everybody. Blake was bringing a gift to the class that they would have missed had he not been a part of it. And it was awesome. I love it. We go to birthday parties. We're blended in. And for us, it's always been inclusion. That's all we know. So school was no different for us, because we go to church. Blake was plugged right in. Swimming, all of those things. And I think to have been taken out of that would have been disappointing, because this is what we know. So we love the fact that Blake is able to participate. He's able to go and he loves it. He hops right on that bus and he waves bye to me. He doesn't think anything of it, and he has the best time. And the communication, that is probably the one thing for us that it's always been right away. We want Blake to be able to do this. And this has been so important for us with inclusion, because he gets to keep practicing and practicing and practicing. And, even with a device, those words are coming. And I feel like that has been a huge part of the inclusion ability. I should share that Blake, actually, this is on a personal note, but Blake told me the other day, unprompted, "I love you." Came up to me while I was washing the dishes. So anything could have probably made me happy at the moment, but I felt this little hug around my leg, and unprompted, he said that to me. And that was probably something I thought it would take a really long time. And I knew we were coming here on Thursday, and I did think I'm really just so glad that this has been the way it is, because these are the unexpected surprises that keep happening. And a lot of it has to do with this great foundation that we've been blessed with.
No, so I was your turn. Yeah, you can talk about
Anything?
well, I want you to talk about your staff and how inclusion, being in inclusive programs, has worked for them and for you. Sorry. And for you, and what a difference it's made for your staff and for the families that you work with.
So I have so much to say, and I always have so much to say. So, and I just want to build off of what you all have shared. And I think the thing that I've taken from your experiences that I want you all to know is that we sit at the table with families and we do not have the answers. We are practitioners. We practice what we believe in. And we think that we are setting a child up for success in our school or in the school that they're going to next. But we do our best. But the parents at the table are also the experts in a very different way. First teacher, they know what they do the rest of the day, the other 21 and a half hours of the day. So the partnership is huge for us. And we build documents to support inclusion. We believe in inclusion. And there's a mix, just, like with your son, the pull out and the push in. Is it 100% inclusion in kindergarten as they move forward? Those are variables and we're uncertain. So to talk those things out are so important because we learn new facts, like my child just told me he loved me. As an educator, there's so many pieces to that. As a mom and a dad, that's an amazing thing. But that talks to me about communication, about those social emotional growth markers that he's had and just been able to express them. So I can't stress enough how important it is that there is a relationship and communication. So speaking about in my school, we sit and collaborate constantly. We have team meetings with all of our support staff. That's our OT, PT, nurse, the classroom teachers, the paraprofessionals, the administrators. We sit and talk about every child every month, and we have deep dives and we talk about challenges and successes. And then the teachers, the staff leaves that forum and they go back into their own classrooms and they have their own classroom team meeting. And from there, they're talking about instruction and how to best meet the needs of the children in front of them with an instructional or curricular lens on. And everybody has, I've got 4 people there planning, and they all have different perspectives about ways to meet the needs. And then from there, we have parent meetings. So we are in constant collaboration about every child in the school. And we are very problem-solving oriented. And we like the challenge. We like to I met today with 10 staff members about a challenge. We've got an IEP meeting coming up, and we spent an hour talking about inclusion for this child moving forward. And I wish the parents had been there, because this was a school meeting and the parents are coming in next week, which is a week or 2 prior to the IEP. I think that in communication, it's both written and verbal. You all should have those documents well before the meetings so that you have time to process and plan and add and think and meet with all of the support staff, the educators. There's so many important reasons to be an advocate for your child and be knowledgeable and reach out for support from other agencies. We welcome advocates at our table. We welcome attorneys at our table because they too bring a different perspective. I learn something new every day from an outsider coming in. And as does my team, and we talk about it. So the meeting that I had this morning, I brought something up we learned from an advocate a year and a half ago. And I reminded, only half the team learned that lesson, and I reminded them about it. So I want you all to know that we're experts, but we're learning experts, and we learn from agencies, parents, children, from everybody. So I don't really remember your question, but that's typical. There's so much I want you to know about how important inclusion is for every reason that you guys said. There's just so much to benefit and gain from, and you need to be advocates for that. So I'm going to turn the microphone back over and stop talking.
I mean, as part of
the story as well to follow up on that was when Miles was in kindergarten, you know, the aspect or the mindset of the special education program at that time was very different than it is now. And it was almost like a closed door, don't talk about it. I can't even explain exactly what it was, but, you know, the parent was encouraged not to be involved. And I don't know if it's an effort of mistrust or CPS or whatever it is, but there were times in the beginning when I would say, you know, does his art teacher know that he has autism? Because we're having some challenges, and are you sharing the IEP? And is it all the accommodations and modifications being made? And again, it was an entirely different staff, administration, case management, but the case manager's concern was there a confidentiality breach? And, you know, we don't want to label, and I'm thinking, my kid's walking around the school labeling himself. So it's important that everybody be fully aware, and it's also okay. There's no stigma behind it. So it was an incredible shift in mindset at our school to get to a point where it was collaborative, that I was a necessary part of the team. And, you know, I can say as a parent, my kiddo is very complicated, and they almost felt like they couldn't say that, and they needed to know the answers, and none of us know the answers. We're all just trying what's right. So it's been a wonderful shift, but that mindset was there.
Really piggybacking right on that, you know, we often talk about inclusion for the kids in the classroom, but it's inclusion for the parents in the process. And that has been really, really rewarding, because as our administrators and our team, the folks that are helping us with the IEP, are learning Blake, they're coming up with ways to help us at home, right? It's not just about what's happening in the classroom. And so there's this shared learning and collaboration where we're sharing ideas on how we're helping Blake. Things we do at home that are really helpful for him that fold over into the classroom. Things that are happening in the classroom that can fold over at home. And so I think that while it's easy to think about inclusion kids in the classroom, parents being included into this process, being welcomed and embraced into this process has been a huge benefit, because we walk into this knowing only what we know, right? And to have a group of folks that are trained in their field with really big and warm, open hearts, right? There to help us navigate the next steps, because we're not really sure what they ought to be all the time. We're not quite sure the questions we ought to be asking all the time. And to have that resource to help steward both Blake's learning experience and our own, it's kind of a big deal. And I think that's something that has been a takeaway from my perspective in this process of navigating inclusion in the schools.
So yay, we have some questions. And before I ask this first one, I want to thank both of you, or all three of you, for talking about the fact that your children are included outside of school. So it only makes sense that they be included in school. They're part of neighborhoods, they're part of churches, they're part of all the other parts of the community. So exactly. And so for them not to be included in school, yeah. So we have a question here. They would like to know, can you speak to any ways that your child being included has been a benefit to their siblings?
Well, I can say that I have an only child, and I'm actually a solo parent, so it's just me and Miles at home, which is actually a bigger driver for keeping him in an inclusive environment, because a lot of students, for him specifically being on the spectrum, he enjoys being around adults. He can sort of withdraw into himself. So this has been an even more incentive to keep him in a very inclusive environment.
We have a fourth grader, and it has definitely shaped our son Gabe. We've noticed that as Gabe processes what Blake's going through, I think it allows him the opportunity to see how he can implement that in his school. They go to two different schools, And I think that that's really a good thing. I think friends see it. I think that Gabe's friends are witness to what they're seeing Blake going through, and they celebrate his successes. I overheard a conversation between Gabe the other night with a friend, and they were talking about Down syndrome. And I really love Gabe's perspective of it. Gabe said it in this conversation with, I listened. I mean, I was craning my neck trying to hear what was going on, because I was like, the conversation started something along the lines of, how is Blake doing? And Gabe said, oh, he's doing fantastic. And Gabe says that quite a bit. You know, Gabe is super proud of all the things that Blake might be doing. And his friend mentioned, you know, who probably didn't have a good understanding about Down syndrome, but he did say, I'm really sorry to hear that he has Down syndrome. And Gabe said, oh, well, he's just doing fine. You know, he's doing really good, and he's talking. But I, of course, was crying. But I was just so tickled pink that he is proud. That is what it is. He sees Blake as his brother. He sees Blake as, you know, the very person that we believe too. And I love that. In fact, Wednesday of this week is World Down Syndrome Day. And Gabe's class is doing a Rock Your Socks Day, because that's kind of the deal that you do on March 21st. And he's all excited because he's actually going to participate with me in it. I don't even know what I'm going to say, but he's got a lot to say and share about his brother. And that's an opportunity to include and allow people in his classroom to see what inclusion looks like. And we're thrilled. So,
You know, growing up as a sibling of you know, a brother or sister with special needs, nobody's ever going to have to teach Gabe about inclusion, right? I mean, how cool is that? And I think that boy, just the things that can do to transform the world around him. You know, you take that back and look at the kids that get to go to school with our kids, right? Those kids are being taught about inclusion and don't even know it, right? It's not inclusion to them, it's life, right? Just like there's really no place apart in life, like you mentioned, Evelyn, right? I mean, life is life. Life is inclusive. And I just think it's so cool to see, just see that little ripple effect, right, across kids. They don't know any different, and they don't want to. And I think that's really neat. And Gabe, as a brother, as a sibling, very effortlessly and gracefully displays that with how he cares for his brother, how he explains his brother to other people, and how he just invites everybody to come right along and be part of the party, because that's life, right?
So one of the absolute best parts of my day is to greet the families coming into the school. And so I see all the siblings coming in with the student, and I mirror everything that you just said. I see a lot of twins and a couple triplets, and sometimes one has special needs and the other does not. So I can see firsthand the pride that they both have in each other. And sometimes the parents want them in the same classroom. Sometimes they want them separated so they can grow as individuals. And we respect the parents' wishes. They know best. So, but we take them to visit. Or if one is having a difficult time, whichever one, sometimes it helps to have your sibling there. So, I mean, just you should see the love. And there are no masks, there is no wall, and their friends come around to help and support. So that's mostly the picture. But I do have to say that we have seen siblings that do have a difficult time with this. And they're becoming aware that there may be differences. So we then reach out to some of our supportive partners in the community that they have really crafty names to the groups, but they're play groups. And there are play groups for the typically developing child, and there are play groups that include the children, and there are twin groups that have this. So those resources are definitely out in the community. And I think it's important to know that, because although our experience has been that way, I have seen siblings that are noticing differences and aren't quite sure how to handle it, or they don't have the language to put their love and their thoughts expressively out there. So sometimes you do need to support and foster that sibling love and inclusiveness and sharing.
You're such a mind reader. I was going to ask you about your families because I know that you do greet them every day and are close to a lot of them and how they see it. So our next question is, how important is it that the school as a whole has a focus on inclusion? I guess we'll let the principal start the answer to that one and move it down.
So the question being, how important is it for the entire school to have an inclusive focus? It's huge. It's huge. But I mean, we are a building of very different people that are coming together with the single-minded focus of loving children, making sure that children love school because we're setting the tone for their future, and providing every service and support that we can to make them successful, whatever that looks like for that particular child. And that's our goal. So coming from different backgrounds and different, I think, beliefs in inclusion, you know, somebody may believe in it until there's a challenge that they cannot overcome. You know, so the reality is that there are teachers and staff members, you know, throughout that want to believe in it, but may not have the knowledge of how to include a child to benefit them to the maximum, with the maximum supports. And I think that as a principal, as an administrator, it's then my job to make sure that they have all the resources and the knowledge to make sure they're supporting a child in an inclusive setting. We have really deep discussions at my school about it. You know, we had one today, and it's an ongoing climate and culture expectation. And it's okay to have an opinion that is not exactly like your neighbors, because I think that's how we work things through and get a deeper understanding of what we believe in. So that's what exists at my school, and I'm proud of it. And I don't want us all to be robots that believe in the same thing. I like the challenge. I like the thoughtfulness behind inclusion, because every child is unique and an individual, and therefore their inclusive plan has to be tailored to them and be unique and individual. So, you know, that's how we see it at my school.
Yeah, you know, I can speak as a non-educator from the parent aspect, but, you know, my son's neighborhood elementary school is one of the, I think it's the top first or second elementary school in all of Chicago, and they have had an administration change, and with that came an attitude change that you can't really talk about inclusion without talking about exclusion at the same time. And there was this mindset again that yeah, well, it's been much better than it was before. I'll leave it there. But I think that most of it has been that inclusion is difficult, and that it's not just a word that you say, and it's not very easy to do when you have classrooms that have 33 kids in it instead of 24, and that everything ties together, and it's a challenge. And I think that our school has made efforts to have team meetings to include parents and to learn from what might work with one child who's on the spectrum might not work from another child who's on the spectrum. I think they're also learning that inclusion does not mean just having all of the kids that might be on an IEP in the same classroom, or, you know, understanding how there are many different ways to do it. And I think that the nice thing is that our school is starting, and they're doing a lot of more research, and they're starting to say, okay, we also know that we can do inclusion wrong. And so we're all going to work together and work with the families to make a long-term plan of how to put the steps and processes into place. So.
I think it's really important. I'll probably answer this one because I go to the school more often, but I would definitely say that I noticed that is, for our team, the ultimate goal. The goal is to better Blake's experience together. The goal is to discuss things. We have open and candid conversations. We celebrate things. All of that is important. But I know that the goal and the mindset is together to make this the best experience possible. So I think that when everyone's rowing in the same direction, that's the best place to start. And, you know, the differences of maybe, you know, teachers, or as far as like maybe opinions or strategies and things like that. I think that when you're united on something, you want to make this happen. And I do witness this with our team. We're able to get through it, and we do talk through it. We meet often, and I think it's fabulous. I think that I appreciate that they want to include my opinion in it. I also think that it's important that I hear what they have to say about it too, from the speech to the OT to the PT to the principal. But I will say, one of the benefits again, and it really ties back to our experiences, that I know I'm in good hands. I know that the goal is to do the best job possible with Blake in this process as we move forward. And that breaks down those barriers for me. And that allows me right from the get-go to know, hey, we're in this together. And I love it.
I have two more things to say. I think it's important to also know that coming in to our school, I have parents that absolutely don't want their child to be included, because the belief system that they have is that the child will receive more intentional instruction that's skill-based, I would say therapeutic type instruction. And that's a challenge to talk through as well and figure out what is the long-term outcome, what is the goal, and how do we navigate through that to bring a parent's knowledge about inclusion to the table and work through it with them and talk to them about it. So we certainly see that too. And I think that opinion is to be validated as well. People come and enter the educational system, both educators and parents, with different philosophies. So it's my responsibility as the principal to educate the staff and the parents and let them know what their options are and what the benefits are. So that, and I'll turn the mic over at that point.
Yeah. I think one of the things that I've done as a parent, because we were in a very different, some of the teachers were under the mindset, well, I can't educate your child. So we need to be working on documenting all the behaviors that will get them into private placement as quick as we can kind of just move on and get out of this. And so I think that as a parent, coming from the mindset to the meetings of saying, we're not going anywhere. I'm staying here. Miles is going to be here this year and next year, and we're going to work together. So please take that off the table. And then pointing out and reaching out trainings. Mm-hmm. A lot of trainings that CPS does offer, and maybe reaching out to Elizabeth Keenan or whomever and saying, hey, we need a little bit of training from your autism department or your BCBAs or something to come in and really help make the teachers feel more empowered with really instructional support. So for them.
Just an observation, just listening here across the table. You mentioned a couple of words, climate and culture. I mean, it's hugely important. And so there's one perspective here where from an administration level, there's a culture and climate that clearly is coming from the top, right? That's clearly coming from a passionate, enthusiastic place, and it's permeating all the way through the organization. On the other hand, right, in your experience, you created the culture. You had to be that seed, right, to be able to see that that spark, right, and turn that into a flame inside your organization and create that awareness and culture. So just an observation that I'm having right here in front of you, right, is that, you know, there's that shared responsibility, and we can't just depend on an extraordinary administrator, right, to be present so that culture exists. We've got to do our part as well, because one person, one family can make a difference in creating that spark and igniting that same pursuit of climate and culture for inclusion inside of a school or an organization. So that just kind of dawned on me listening to y'all speak, and it's just worth sharing.
So, yes, but this might get to it. I really do have to say that I've been at this school for 9 years, and I the administrator before me was the one who set the culture and climate and the tone, and then we have just done such deep dives with it. So really, the administrator before me set that up, and the staff, it's our way of being, and we just continue to talk and perfect it. The other thing that we can hit later, and it might be in here, is that when your child goes on to an elementary school or goes to a different elementary school, that as advocators, I think it's really important that you understand the process of advocating for your child, of a very strongly written IEP, and taking your belief system with you to the next experience. Because I think you've got a nice example of that, and you're about to jump into that pot. But IEPs change when they go into an elementary school, and philosophies change when you go to another school. So I think it's so important as advocates that you are to make sure that you understand your child's needs, their growth in the last couple of years, and your belief system, your home belief system, so that you can share that grassroots belief system with the school that your child will be in or the program they'll be in next. Okay, go.
Back and forth. So, and I think that's something that's really important in CPS. Inclusion does not mean that you no longer need supports and services to be included. I think we're having a challenge with that a little bit on the transition from pre-K into kindergarten. A lot of schools will get the IEP and then they will back out on some supports and services, and a positive inclusion method includes the supports and services that come along with the IEP.
Yeah, people often forget that part of the law about, LRE with the appropriate supports and services. That's part of it too. It's not just the LRE. So these two questions kind of go together. So I'm going to put them together. One person asked, what do you imagine the transition to middle or high school will be like? And what do you hope for and what do you worry about? And then this other question just says, what are you looking forward to in your child's future? And I think we can roll those together. I love that question.
I'm not even going to talk to that. That's a parent question. Those are great questions.
Oh, good God. So, Miles, for us, as the years have gone on each year, he's had maybe greater challenges with each year of development. So middle school is a really difficult question to ask. It's something that I think about often. He's going into the 5th grade, and we just had an IEP meeting. Unbeknownst to me, I did ask for an IEP in advance and got it a couple days in advance, but I thought that in 6th grade at our school, they no longer have a pull-out separate classroom, but it's actually 5th grade. So I wasn't prepared for that and was so shocked because my son requires some pull-out instruction just for a break from a classroom of 33 kids. He has sensory challenges and still needs academic instruction that it's not the least restrictive environment to be in a class with 33 kids all day. So it was really shocking because I wasn't sure if, okay, this is it. He's going to have to go into private placement or a different placement. But in working with the team and talking it through, they agreed. And I sort of said, well, it doesn't matter if you don't have a separate classroom right now, because you will have one next year because his IEP states the need for it. Goals were not met. There wasn't a real way to prove the significant decrease in minutes and services. So they worked with me, which was great. And I'm very lucky that they did. And we'll work to see what that looks like exactly for him next year based on his schedule. I think long-term trajectory, my long-term trajectory for Miles has changed significantly because he's included in his gen ed, setting. And so, I'm not going to say that there weren't days that I was concerned about his long-term trajectory because of CPS, but everything's worked out well, and it's certainly been a fight to advocate for what he needs, but I'm much more positive looking to middle school for him. And, and he specifically is going to have and is showing to have greater social and emotional challenges. So his IEP and his supports and services are changing. Alongside, a lack of speech and language therapists and social workers and all that comes with that. But I'm still very positive and hopeful that he can stay. He will be at his neighborhood school next year, hopefully into 6th grade, and then we'll see after that.
Well, we're going into kindergarten, and I feel like it's the biggest decision of my life. So that in itself has been lots of tossing and turning and conversations and what do we do and what next. But in our experience, tailoring back to really just how thankful we are for just the team of supports is there's been phone calls. There's been classroom observations for us to be a part of for us to consider, and I thought somebody set that up for me because they knew it was a worry on my heart. And I didn't know to ask that question. So that was Blake's teacher thinking out loud that this is probably what's going to help his mama feel better. So I don't think we thought any further than kindergarten, but we are taking it one day at a time. But we have noticed, like already, from his love of being in school has been a positive experience for him. He's passionate about art. Best artwork we've got in our house. He's an avid swimmer. Blake is very social, but I was totally caught off guard when I heard the other day that he's strong in math as well. And that was something his teacher told me that I didn't know, and I spend the most time with him, and I love that. When she talked to me about what next year looks like, and she gave me the heads up, and that was the conversation. Remember? We're sitting there, and it caught me off guard because I came into this meeting thinking, we're not talking about anything except, what's going on today. And
Year with Miss Lisa.
And we're looking forward to another year with Miss Lisa, and this is good. And she did throw me a curveball and said, "Hey, listen, we're going to have this kindergarten transition meeting and this and that." And I thought, "What?" And I looked at Taylor, and it caught me very much off guard. I wasn't prepared for it. I had assumed that he was just going to go another year, but no, he's not. And as I've been sitting here, I've been reading about the mindset of the growth. And as a parent, I was on the wrong side of that mindset because I was tossing and turning from that conversation for about 2 months thinking, he's not ready for kindergarten. What are we going to do? I want him to speak more and this and that and all this stuff. And unbeknownst to me, that was a learning for me where I need to get out of Blake's way because he's been taking all of this and just running with it because of the other people that have been able to also just embrace him. Tagging on to next year, his teacher, Miss Lisa, even called me at home after I reached out an email and sent her a bunch of questions after I decided it was probably time. I need to reach out before this meeting, and we haven't had our meeting yet either. So we've had open dialogue. But I do remember her giving me reasons why she was going to make recommendations for what she was going to make so I could noodle on them and see if those were something that would feel important or appropriate is probably the better word for Taylor and I. And again, it just brought me back to why didn't I just reach out to her sooner? We have that. I shouldn't have thought about it. Blake's education is not just on our shoulders. And that is really a good feeling because as everybody up here has said, we don't have all the answers. We're learning this as we go. I'm racking my brain here, and I just don't think I can get back past kindergarten today. But, I am on the other side of that mindset, and it has a lot to do with the team that we have and also the little guy that we're talking about because he's the one who keeps showing me that he's ready to go because of the people who are believing in him.
So because of the benefits of this inclusive environment, right? Blake goes everywhere in life, school and everywhere with absolutely no fear, right? And so when you see that happen, he runs into class, he runs everywhere he's going with a big smile on his face. He's pumped to be there. And because he has no fear, I really don't either, right? Because he knows he's run into a place where he's safe and he can be himself. And I think that the fact that we have an environment that promotes that makes it that much easier to put one step in front of the other, because at the heart of this whole collaboration, this whole inclusive thing, is Blake's best interests, right? Everything revolves around Blake's best interests. And knowing that and having those relationships, right, to rely on and count on and truly lean on in this process, I'm excited. I mean, middle school, man, Blake is going to be living the dream. High school, Blake is going to be living the dream. Following this guy's life and his story as the pages turn and the chapters turn is going to be one of the single greatest privileges I could ever ask for, because he is on fire and I can't wait to see what he does. And I think that that's only enhanced and accelerated and made even more vibrant because of how well he's just stewarded and how his best interests are always at the center of the conversation.
I think Blake is pretty lucky to have mom and daddy does. Let me just say that. And Miles too. And I will just say to you that I did ask for my sons. Went to his principal when he was in 8th grade and said, please fail him and do not let him go to high school because I'm not ready. So I'm just letting you know that I did. I was like, can't we like redo that IEP or something? Because I am not ready. So I'll just let you know that. We have a couple questions about specific strategies for working with teachers or staff members who might be anxious or reluctant or even resistant to inclusion, and any specific tools you can think or want to share or would recommend for advocating for your child around inclusion.
I'm going to pass the mic.
Yeah, I think so. I think that most importantly was, and I can speak as a non-educator specific to autism, was that part of inclusion with a student like mine is that he's going to have to stand up and walk around, and he might be flapping, and he might speak out of turn, and he might not raise his hand and wait for you to answer him. So part of it was to encourage him to continue to do those things and truly be included. Can we just let him blurt out his question? Can you allow him to be a part of the classroom in ways that work for him, and still sort of teach him how to model his peers, because it's going to take him a little while to understand the structure of the classroom. Truly understanding why I'm supposed to sit here and listen to you talk to me for 20 minutes and understanding that there were some extra challenges involved in that he wasn't being non-compliant, that it was a lack of understanding of the structure of a classroom. And he certainly didn't want to be there. But if you could continue to work with visual schedules and some of those aspects that would help everybody move forward much faster. I have sometimes felt like a case manager a little bit, but really love when, you sort of talk about one specific intervention and the teacher picks it up and says, yeah, well, I learned about and I did A, B, and C, and that's really great. I think it's, again, it's a mindset. My son has a dedicated aide who is phenomenal. So we're really lucky, and his aide has followed him through the, since last year, and he'll follow him on to next year as well. So his aide is an amazing resource for his general education teacher. And then we're also encouraging for special education minutes pushed into the classroom. But I really think that we, as a parent, advocate that if he's in the classroom and he's in the back of the room with his aide, that is not inclusion. So whatever we can do, which I understand is very challenging in a classroom with 33 kids, to make sure that he is truly included. So.
Did you know that Evelyn moved across so I wouldn't get the microphone? Actually, I did not. I wrote the word strategies down before you asked the question because I wanted to just remind everybody that because your child has membership in a classroom does not mean they're being included. And it doesn't mean that the strategies that are being used to include your child are the best strategies out there. And as you said, and as we've said at the table tonight, you all know your child. And we're looking for a partnership that tells me what's working at home so that we can continue that in school, and what's working in school so we can continue it at home. So I want you to be knowledgeable that just because your child's in a gen ed classroom does not mean they are receiving services that you want them to receive. And I'm trying to think of a classroom or a school in this scenario that is not inclusive minded. So as a parent, how would you bring them along? And, my heart breaks for you in CPS because my experience in CPS has been very different. I've been a member of CPS for over 20 years, and I find that they do a phenomenal job with children with special needs if they're open-minded to advocacy and have certain strands, like our augmentative communication department, our technology department, some of our special ed, our autism department has different trainings available. So they're out there. I think it's a matter of just what you said, advocating for your child and their teacher to get those resources. So no matter what district you're a part of, and our state they have those resources out there. You are going to be the case manager for your child from now until forever. So accept that role, because if you don't, your child's not going to get the advocacy that they need. So you are their case manager, you are their parent, and it's your job, sort of sadly, to find those resources to support the school, to support your child. Also, of course, it's the school's responsibility, but I'm thinking worst case scenario. So.
We're gonna let Ann almost wrap it up. There's one with the other Ann. We did have one more. What are a few recommendations you would make to professionals to help build relationships with families? I was just gonna answer that one myself real fast. Listen, communication. But yeah. All right.
I think that just coming to the table as a partner is key. A partner as a parent, a partner as a teacher. Everybody plays a role in inclusion. And it is, I absolutely agree with everything I heard. It is my responsibility to make sure that as I know things, I'm sharing those, as I'm just stumbling across things, because I'm with him the most, and I'm able to pass on the things that will help him the most, and actually could help other children in other scenarios too as well. But I do think that it is communication. It's the key. Taylor and I do use this word a lot, partnership. It is our responsibility to not just to show up, but to be involved and to look for resources, to talk to others, to do our very best to make his education experience possible. And I do think that when a family knows that you're emotionally involved as well, obviously we're doing education, but when they see that side, I think that helps too. I think that I think that being an ally and being encouraging, sometimes people don't remember or recognize or realize, and we're all busy, but it can be somewhat challenging too as a parent to be coming in, because it is way overwhelming, as you consider it. And I think just even being conscious of how that might feel. I think that was the one difference when we walked into that very first meeting, is that they knew that we might look like deer in headlights, and they were able to break that wall down. And it was simple things. It was eye contact, it was encouragement, it was being prepared, and it was really taking an interest in our family. And I think that made all the difference for us right from the get-go.
Yeah, I'd boil that down to authenticity, right? I walked into this first IEP meeting completely unprepared. Didn't know what questions to ask, didn't know what this process really meant or what it was about, or if I was being steered in one direction versus another. And I remember it was really, and I expect that this will happen repeatedly as we go through the grades, right? But my first initial experience was it was very difficult in that environment to have your child's diagnosis broken down to specific areas of opportunity and so forth. And I really struggled with that as we kind of put this down to written word and into a plan and so forth, and actually talked about delays and deficiencies. And while my guard was very much up, what broke through that was the authenticity of folks and the active demonstrating and explaining that Blake's best interests were at heart, and we're front and center. And so that authenticity creates the trust and creates the open communication that's needed, I think, to make the whole partnership thing come to life.
Yeah, I think I would say the same thing, communication. And, I've had IEP meetings where there were 13 people in the meeting and my voice was not heard until I had to speak up and be a part of it. But I think really just understanding that the parent that comes in that doesn't know what to advocate for, there's a clinical aspect, an educational aspect, a social emotional aspect. It's a lot. I would also say that early on, it's okay to talk about the clinical aspect of it, because I think that as a parent, for me with a student with autism, because they weren't, the IEP team was trying to be very gentle, I would live in a world of denial for a very long time. So it was okay for them when we really started talking about the realities. It's okay, and really important for communication.
And I'll say that, my school has a really nice reputation, and I am blessed to work with the staff that I work with. They're amazing. And even being that amazing, and when I say we, I include myself, we have blown it. We have sat at a table with our best intentions, and we cannot seem to communicate these intentions to a parent. Or on the flip side, a parent is unable to get their message into our souls, our ears, our heads. And, we have blown it before. So the question that was asked made me think, when that happens, how do we all take a step back and say, we need to regroup here? Like, we need to sit down and think through this a little bit differently. And, it's once in a blue moon that we blow it. But when we do, my hope is always to let everybody calm down and then reach back out and say, okay, can we come back to the table and think about this as a team and figure this out and bridge our differences or explain ourselves differently? So, although we're sitting up here saying that our experiences have been good or getting better, and coming from a high-performing school, there are still chances. We're human and we make mistakes. And sometimes our thoughts are not as accurate as we'd like them to be, or our mouth doesn't say what our head is thinking. So please leave a little bit of room for people to think out loud and problem solve together and make this a team effort. So, and time as well. And time. Yes. Time. Yes.
Perfect. Okay. So, thank you. There's a couple questions here that Evelyn asked me to answer, kind of around skills. Are there skills required to be included? And the answer is no. Yes. That inclusion, and you guys can't see this real closely, so when you're on the way out, really it's looking at what skills a child does have and building on the positive skills and using those to build on. And that's what all of education is. So, if they, we need to look at the child as a whole, and there isn't a trade-off between social and academics. Being included does have some great benefits in social emotional learning, because as you guys have all shared, those are important things. But also the Gen Ed curriculum, the regular classroom, is where all the education happens. So we want to make sure that our children with disabilities have access to that great education. And so that's part of it too. And I haven't, when I introduced myself as the project leader for Early Choices. And I'm also the parent of two two kids. One came a little late and is here tonight. And so my story started 27 years ago. And that's what drives me to do the work still today. And those academic gains, social gains are innumerable. And Austin started to be included when he was 3, and we went to the local preschool and had services there, and then was included all the way through high school, and now is works at Kohl's and has a busy life that I run around driving him everywhere. So one skill we don't have, but you guys on the back table is a something that we call What Makes Inclusion Work. This is also on our website if you're watching online. And you guys hit all the key points tonight. You can all come work for Early Choices. Or StarNet, yes. But really, the key points around having a vision and attitude, making sure that you have the supports in place, like the accommodations, the time, that was like the one thing nobody mentioned, but the time for planning, the partnerships with families. You guys talked a lot about some adaptations and strategies to support, and a lot about collaboration and teaming, and that you can't do it alone. You can try. It's hard. I know. I've been there too. But you really need that team coming together. So before you leave tonight, make sure you pick one of these up, and there's more info on the back. So Evelyn, do you want to do the... Okay, but as Evelyn's coming over here to do the raffle, I want to say thank you so much to our panelists, because you guys were awesome. Give them a round of applause.
I'm gonna let each of you pick a name now.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's. Guess who my kid is? I'm gonna let you read your name.
I let Ann answer that question because she's the only one I know that's more passionate than I am about making sure that the school is ready for the kid. It's not the kid's job to be ready for school.
Door prize number 1.
Oh, do I need to pick another one?
You got to do the number.
Okay, just say the last 4 digits. Get your raffle prizes out. And while you're doing that, before Christine reads the number, there are some evaluations in the middle of the table. We're going to ask you to please complete those for us. It's how we continue to get grant money so we can keep our jobs and keep doing this work. So we're going to ask you to just leave it on the table. So
Okay.
Last 4 digits.
5866.
Claire has prizes up here. We got 2 Early Choices, StarNet goodie bags, and an Aspire goodie bag.
Ready?
Barbara Holmes, come on down.
All right. Last 4 digits, 5865. And while I've got the microphone in my hand, how about a round of applause for all the great folks here from Aspire and StarNet and Early Choices that spend so much of their time pouring into our families. Thank y'all.
Thank you. She wants to know who the audience is.
I'm just curious. Like, it warms my heart.
Okay, you can ask them. You've had the mic all night.
I'm just very curious. Are you guys parents? Are you part of advocacy groups? Are you?
So how about if you're a parent? Can we? No? Okay.
Okay.
Teachers in classrooms?
I taught with CPS for like 9 years, but I'm a licensed daycare provider for the past 16 years.
Great.
I actually graduated from the school.
I love that.
What about advocacy?
Advocacy groups. So we have parents. We've got early childhood and teachers and advocacy groups, higher ed and therapists, and higher ed. Great. Did I miss anybody?
State agency?
That's really a gambit, and it's a heartwarming gambit of people that are here, from parents the whole way through education and advocacy and therapy. Thank you.
I was getting ready to thank everybody, but I've been in trouble for not using it.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, sorry. So thank you all so much for coming and those great questions and participating. And please give our panelists another round of applause. You guys were terrific. We will definitely want to be doing this again. And help yourself to a cup of coffee before you go out the door. And we have lots of resource materials in the back. And we're all here if you have questions about our work. Thank you. Oh, take a K cup to go. Oh, yeah.